to Covering the Fields with your host, Joe Ellison.
Hello, sports fans. Broadcasting from Meredith Hall Studios. Welcome to Covering the Field, the weekly program that analyzes all sports, handicaps them, and makes predictions. I'm your host, Joe Ellison, and today we're going to talk about college basketball, the NFL, USFL, the NBA, hockey, racing, baseball, golf, and our You Got Host segment. We'd like to remind you listeners to email us at coveringthefield@gmail.com. Please give us your feedback, tell us your You Got Host stories, and visit our coveringthefield.com website daily to check out our many articles and our picks of the day and week. Find us on Twitter at coveringfield. First off, we'd like to congratulate the winners of our first ever March Madness Covering the Field bracket contest. Congrats to Jim G., our fourth place winner of the free haircut from Capital Barbershop.
Was that Jimmy G?
Jimmy G. He's got his own guy to do his hair.
Okay.
Our third place, we have Patrick C., who won a $75 Amazon gift card. In second place was the team of Justin and Jamie, who won the $125 Olive Garden gift card. And our first place grand prize winner, who won themselves Apple AirPods, where they can tune into us every week with comfort and style, was the team of Ron and Heather. Yay for Ron and Heather.
Good job, Ron and Heather, but I don't know how they're going to split these ear pods. I mean, maybe we'll have somebody have it on the right ear and she can have it in the left ear. I mean,
they'll find a way to work that out. And tipping things off this week, I'd like to introduce our men's college basketball and football expert, Big Richard Martin. How are you doing today?
Well, it's great to be here. Great to be here, Joe.
Big Rich, going into the Final Four of March Madness, we had Kansas playing Villanova and Duke playing North Carolina. Starting with those Saturday semifinal games, what happened in the final weekend of college basketball's NCAA tournament?
Well, as always, the NCAA does not disappoint you. It is a great tournament. So many great highs and lows, great emotion from the players. I just thought it was a great tournament. We have Duke and North Carolina, first ever Final Four, round 3 of their games for the year, and it didn't disappoint us. I mean, it was a 1-point game. Duke was actually winning by 1 point with a minute left, and Marc Williams gets to shoot 2 free throws, and we hear the big clunk, 2 free throws. It's hard to win those games if you don't make those free throws at the end. Caleb Love and Brady Manick, they're the new Splash Brothers for North Carolina. They go down there and drain 2 3-pointers at the end. Great game. It was just tough to see Coach K go out that way. I thought they might have had a chance, but if someone's got to knock out Duke, it's really good when it's the Tar Heels, right?
Yeah, that's a huge rivalry. And amazingly, they had never met in the NCAA tournament. I thought that was quite a surprise. And the other surprise, Hubert Davis, the first-year head coach, beating Mike Krzyzewski, the 5-time champion of the entire tournament.
Well, did you know that Coach K, his first loss was to North Carolina, and his last loss was North Carolina? So pretty good.
And maybe his worst loss, the one at home, his last home game.
His last home game. So, he's not really liking that baby blue.
I don't think he ever did. And that Kansas beating Villanova, that was really no contest. That was kind of a disappointment. Right. Obviously, losing Justin Moore, Villanova just wasn't the same team.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. You called that out. Missing your captain, missing Justin Moore's definitely took a toll on him. But I don't think it was so much that Villanova played bad. I think Kansas just played a great game. Choa Agbaji, thank you. He had 21 points and he shot 6 for 7 out of the 3-point line. I mean, he was hotter than taco sauce, man.
They were amazing from 3 for sure.
And Villanova always plays good defense, but they couldn't keep up with Kansas. And then let's just talk about Kansas, the final game. Rock Chalk Jayhawks, man. I mean, they were trailed by 16 points in the first half. I think everybody might have threw away their tickets because they thought North Carolina had the game in the bag. I saw my cousin Pistol Pete digging through the trash in the second half because he had Kansas +5, trying to find his ticket. It was under a few beer cans in the trash can, and they make just an amazing comeback. Armando Bacot got hurt. And he rolled his ankle, and I think that really cost him. I mean, there was a great comeback. They took the lead. They were up by 3 points with 4.3 seconds left. And what does DeJohn Harris do? Steps out of bounds. Are you kidding me? If you have Kansas +5, this is going down to You Got Hosed segment. You have +5. He's shooting 2 free throws. He's going to cover the 4.5. And what does he do? He steps out of bounds before he gets fouled. And then
How did you know that was going to be my You Got Hosed segment? You just foreshadowed my You Got Hosed.
I think everybody who had that ticket got hosed. Not just you, Joe. I mean, we have to share that hose section with it. It's a worldly hose section.
It's a world-class hose.
A world-class hose section right there.
No doubt. Yeah, I would say, I was looking at Kansas, and I was looking at the guys on the floor, and I saw some gray hair on some of those guys. That was the oldest team I've ever seen.
Right, they're all seniors, and they didn't get to play that 2020 season due to the COVID restrictions on the NCAA canceling their tournament in 2020. So they all came back, and they showed up for their coach. They showed up for the Rock Chalk Nation, Lawrence, Kansas. It was just great. And David McCormick, I thought, had a great end of the game, making those 2 hook shots look like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or it was Louis Sender at that time, UCLA. And, I thought he probably would get the MVP, but to my surprise, it's not a most valuable player. It's a most outstanding player of the tournament.
The entire tournament. And usually that's the Final Four. So, obviously, Ochoa didn't have a real great finals game. He was 3 from 8 from free throws. He only had 12 points and 3 rebounds. He doesn't sound like an MVP to me. But for the whole tournament, they wouldn't be there if it wasn't for him. So let's just give him the credit. Great job. Great stories from Milwaukee. Came up in Milwaukee. Just a great story. Yep. Congratulations to Bill Self getting his 2nd championship as head coach. He is the highest paid coach in the entire country. Over $10 million a year. I guess he just earned his $10 million.
Yeah, I think that everybody in Lawrence, Kansas is pretty happy with that contract that he has. And I think that the one thing about that game, though, Joe, is I think that where Armando Bacot rolled his ankle, the same play, that 3-point shot was supposed to go to Brady Manick. He was coming off a screen at the same place where he rolled his ankle. Manick slipped and fell. I mean, I don't know if it's like one of those Budweiser commercials where they pop the sprinkler head up. I mean, like 2 injuries in the same exact spot. And then Caleb Love just he shot a prayer shot. It wasn't even a good shot with 4 seconds left. So,
no, it was a shot though, and that would have sent it to overtime had it gone in. So that would have been really amazing.
That would have been great. But let's give them credit. They deserved it for sure. It was good to see them.
Quite an amazing comeback. Down 40-25 at halftime, outscored them 47-29 in the second half. I don't know if anybody really saw that coming.
No, I think everybody thought that the game was over at halftime, and they just came out blazing, and before you know it, they were up by 3.
Yep. So Kansas bucked a trend. 6 of the last 7 national champions had not won their conference tournament. They were at-large teams in the NC2A tournament that won, but Kansas won their conference tourney and the national championship. So now that's 6 out of the last 8 years. I went down the road of North Carolina. Luckily, I covered.
Yeah, you imagine if you had that 125-1 odd ticket and you're up by 16 at halftime. I mean,
perfect time to hedge.
Perfect time to hedge. Yeah, it would have been, instead of instead of dumping, they dumped $1,000. If you put $10, that'd have been $1,200 for a $10 bet.
Well, I encouraged everyone around me who had North Carolina at halftime to hedge Kansas. You just never know what's going to happen. And he says, "Well, I think I threw away some money hedging." No, you didn't.
You would have some money.
You have some money. Now the question was, would the championship be vacated in the future? The NCAA has charged Kansas with 5 Level 1 violations labeled egregious and severe.
Oh.
NCAA 2A President Marc Emmert was about to present Kansas the championship trophy, and since he was more nervous than Mike Tyson at a spelling bee, he called them the Kansas City Jayhawks. This case started 2017 when the FBI arrested 10 men in a widespread scheme to defraud college hoops. Luckily for Kansas, no current players are involved, so the trophy is not in danger of being vacated. But 2 men are in federal prison as we speak. They're bagmen from Adidas for providing former Jayhawk recruits and other families money to play at Kansas. So there are some shady things going on.
Yeah, Dirty Bill, huh? Dirty Bill, $10 million man, working outside the lines of the rules of the NCAA.
Yes, but none of these current players are being investigated. So far, so good for the championship.
That's good.
Yes. Big Rich, you are also our NFL commentator. What news was there last week from the National Football League?
Well, Bruce Arians from the Tampa Bay, former Super Bowl champions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, steps down just out of the blue and just tells me about Tom Brady. He had to have something to do with that. I mean, how does Tom Brady come back and you don't want to coach?
I don't think there's any doubt that there's a battle there. Like Tom Brady wants to run the offense, and with Byron Leftwich, and Bruce Arians is coming into the room and saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do something different.
Well, you don't tell Tom Brady. The only one that tells Tom Brady anything to do is his wife, Giselle, I think, would be the only one that would probably have enough clout to tell Tom Brady not to do something, because he's definitely one of the best players that we've ever seen play the game of football.
Right. So Todd Bowles is now the coach. He is a defensive coordinator. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and it was good. We just talked about that a couple shows ago about how the Rooney Rule was in effect, and they didn't have to go through all the hiring processes as they used to have to. And so they did hire a minority coach, which I thought was great for the NFL.
Yes. Which leads us to a question from Ted from Seattle.
Okay, from Ted in Seattle. The reason Tom Brady came out of retirement is because Jim Harbaugh turned down the Minnesota Vikings head coaching job and stayed at University of Michigan. Brady was going to become head coach at University of Michigan, bringing a new modern way to be head coach. Brady would be the, quote, recruiting head coach, unquote, and not required to live in Ann Arbor. He would bring in fabulous coaches who would do the day-to-day coaching. Take or fake? Joe, Big Rich?
I would have
Ted's
to say
question.
It's fake, but it's fabulous. What a great question. I mean, a remote coach. I mean, you don't have to live in Ann Arbor. Why would you want a coach that doesn't want to be in Ann Arbor? How could you tell a kid that I want you to go play in Ann Arbor if I don't even want to be in Ann Arbor? But I think it's a great question. I mean, it's definitely a good question, and it might have some merit to it. I mean, but I think everybody thought Harbaugh was going to get that job in Minnesota, and there was nobody that they did say was going to be next in line for the job. But I think, like you said, recruiting would have been a good tool. Tom Brady came to my house for dinner. I'm going to go play for Michigan. But he probably would do it remotely. I'm sure he wouldn't even go to their house, but he'd do it remotely. No. But I think that, he wants to play football. I think that he has that drive to play football. Like we were talking about before, he's probably calling the play, so he definitely could be a head coach if that's what he'd want to do. But I think it just would take so much time away from your family, which was his reason why he said he wanted to retire, because he wanted to spend time with his family. He has teenage kids and wants to spend more time with his family. 2 weeks later, he wants to be a coach. He wants to play football again. So one thing we can tell you, Ted, is with Tom Brady, nobody knows.
Yeah, I have to also go fake on that. I can't imagine Tom Brady ever coaching the life that he could live and being away from his family, just like you said. So I don't think he's going to be a part of Michigan. I mean, he'll go to some of the games, the spring game, and maybe talk to some recruits and do some of that, but visit once in a while. But he is not going to be a coach ever for any team. That is my prediction.
Well, I mean, it's very, very demanding being a college coach with the recruiting after the season. I mean, your season starts the day after your last game. You have to go get your next set of kids. So it's very, very demanding. And I think that he's living the life of the luxurious with Giselle's in his family. I think that there's, he's not going to be the grind type of job that it takes to be an NCAA coach.
That's a year-round job. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So how about this another story, the Philadelphia trade with New Orleans that just came across last week.
Right. Philadelphia had 3 picks in the top 20, but they keep their top pick, I think it was 16, and they get the 18 pick, and they give 2 picks this year, and they get a total, I think, 5 picks back for those 2 picks. So I think that that was a great move. It's an A-plus move on Philadelphia. They don't have to give all 3 picks. They get 2 this year, 2 next year, so they're not losing picks. They're going to have the same amount of picks. Next year, I think both of them are going to be looking at quarterbacks. I think quarterback class next year with C.J. Stroud and, the Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama. I think that, and then you have TJ Ugalale out of Clemson. So there's 3 top quarterbacks coming out next year. So
they're pointing towards next year's quarterback.
Well, I think they both have quarterbacks, Jameis Winston, and they have Jalen Hurts. Yeah. So I mean, but it's a backup plan, and it gives them the picks. You were going to have to give up first-round picks, as you know, from the Rams and Denver, when 3 weeks and 1 day from today is when the draft happens, and Denver and LA won't even be in the building because they're not drafting the first night because they gave all their first-round picks for the next 2 years.
No, I totally agree. Philly made a good trade there. Jalen Hurts deserves another year to see what he can do.
Absolutely.
So,
it's a good backup plan, and I think that, they're not losing any picks. They're spreading them out, and if they do want to move up in the draft, gives them more first-round picks.
There was also news about veteran Seattle linebacker Bobby Wagner. Where did he end up?
He wants a Super Bowl ring just like Von Miller did. He's going to go play in L.A. I mean, great pickup from the Rams. I mean, I think he's one of the best middle linebackers. If you had him on any of your fantasy football leagues, he had a tackle he was at 5 or 6 tackles a game. So guaranteed, just a solid player. He's going to be great leadership in that. And it's going to be great that, Donald gets triple teamed, so that means your linebackers go free.
Our old Nevada quarterback Colin Kaepernick was in the news, throwing at halftime of the Michigan spring game. What do you think is going to become of that?
Well, I mean, I think if he had the talent, he'd be in that NFL. I mean, if you have talent and you have issues, which he definitely does, I mean, you have to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? If you take him on, you're going to get all that negative publicity. It's going to be a tear in your locker room. I just think it's just not good to build on. But if he was Tom Brady good, he would be playing somewhere. I guarantee it. I mean, you look at Lou Alcindor when he became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He wasn't the most popular player. He used to get booed coming out when he changed his name, but he still had the biggest contract in basketball. And if you can play, they're going to put you in there.
Yeah, I think it's really all about talent. In his last year in the NFL, Kaepernick's record was 2-10. That was 2016. I don't think people actually remember how terrible he was, and he couldn't really put any touch on the ball. He could zip it in there pretty fast, but he couldn't really lob it in there into his receivers very well. And Michelle Tafoya, who retired from NBC, I trust her, she reported that the owners didn't feel that they could win with him as quarterback and that he was not blackballed for kneeling during the national anthem.
Well, he's definitely good enough for a backup role. I mean, I think we can say that without any type of bias. He's definitely good enough for a backup. He definitely has experience. He's played in a Super Bowl. But I just think the juice ain't worth the squeeze, and that's why no one's giving him a contract.
Well, I suppose he could be a backup. Do you want him as a backup? No, he would have to be a starter on your team, or he's not going to be on your team. But
well, I think he's coming back to be a starter for sure. That's what he's trying to do, not to come back to sit on the bench.
Yeah, I felt bad for Tafoya. I guess she's a conservative Republican. Of course, she was labeled as a racist by some after that. But I always felt, if Kaepernick really wanted to show he could still be a starting NFL quarterback, why not play 1 year in Canada? I know that's a crazy concept, but you got that huge field to throw, and he can run all over that huge field. He's an amazing runner, much better runner than thrower at this point, I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, it goes into our next segment. Why not go play in the USFL? We can see what you got.
Yeah. And if he played as well as people say he can play, they'd be begging for him to play in the NFL again. But what I see is he wants to stay in public view and basically have people feel sorry for him. He has an agenda going of this guy who has been blackballed and he can't play when, in fact, it's his talent that is lacking.
Well, that's your opinion, Joe. Let's wrap this up and go into some USFL.
Big Rich, that's not all the news going on in professional sports, is there? This new league starting up.
Yes,
the
very,
United
very
States
excited
Football
for it.
League set to begin Saturday, April 16th.
That's right. So we're going to go over some of the. I think there's some good wages. We can make some wage betting on this, and probably make some money if we just analyze it correctly and see what's really out there. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the 4 South teams this week, and then we'll do the 4 North teams next week.
Yes, the good old USFL. Not the first time we've had the USFL. 1983 and 85 was the Spring-Summer League. A lot of the team names look exactly the same. In fact, I think they are. Of course, there were 18 teams then.
Right.
Owners such as Donald Trump, players such as Jim Kelly and Herschel Walker and
Steve Young.
Steve Young. We could go on and on.
Right.
Great
I think
players.
that's what they were trying to compete with the USFL. It was trying to compete with the NFL, and I think that was just the wrong angle to take. I think it's great for a developmental league.
Yes. So let's talk about the South. What do you got going there, Big Rich?
Okay, let's talk about the Houston Gambler. Who doesn't like a team called the Houston Gamblers, especially on this show, right, Joe?
That
would have to be my favorite team because that's what I love to do.
That was Jim Kelly's team, and he was known for hooking up with casinos after his career. Mr. Fix-It, Jim Kelly, in fact. Gamblers was a perfect name for his team.
Right. And where do you think Houston Gamblers are playing their home games?
I don't know. The Astrodome got burnt down. Where the baseball team plays, maybe.
All games are going to be played in Alabama, Birmingham. Every home game and away game, you're playing in the same. There's 2 stadiums they'll be using, but all the games are going to be in Alabama, Birmingham. So there's not really any home field advantage. So sorry, Pittsburgh, your team is not going to be in Pittsburgh. It's going to be in Alabama playing their game.
That's pretty bizarre. Is that a COVID-related kind of thing, or is that a financial kind of thing? Did they get around to saying why all the games are just going to be in one city?
I have no idea why they did it, but I'm just saying, does Pittsburgh practice in Pittsburgh? Does the New Jersey, do they practice in New Jersey and travel every week? I mean, that's pretty expensive when the average salary is only $40,000, right, for a player?
Right. That saves a ton on traveling, no doubt. The salary for a player is $45,000 if you stay for all 10 weeks, and there is a victory bonus of a whopping $850 to each player.
Oh, for each win?
Yes.
Yeah, you can listen to our show and put that on the Houston Gamblers.
There you go. Practice squad players will make $1,500 a week, and if you get through training camp, it's $600 a week.
Right. So those are some pretty high finances when NBA salaries are $47 million a year. That's what they're paying Russell Westbrook, $46 million next year to be one of the worst teams in the NBA. So I think that there's a little bit of a gap.
Just 3 more zeros.
Exactly. But let's talk about the Houston Gamblers. First of all, let's talk about their head coach, Kevin Sumlin. He was the head coach for the Houston Cougars when they were a perfect 12-0. And the last 2018 to 2020, he was the head coach for the Arizona Wildcats. He also was the Texas A&M coach, where he coached Johnny Manziel. So they have, and I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to talk about some of the players, Joe. Take or fake.
Or fake.
All first-round picks in the supplemental draft for USFL were quarterbacks. Take or fake.
Oh, I'm going to say fake. What are the odds of them all being quarterbacks?
Well, it's definitely true. Every pick, the number one pick was the quarterback. And it tells you in the NFL, you need a quarterback. So every first round of the supplemental pick was a quarterback. And so I'm going to go over the quarterbacks on each team, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the coaches. So let's talk about the Houston Gamblers. Clayton Thorson was an outstanding 2-year starter for Northwestern from 2015 to 2018. He had 53 starts as a Big Ten quarterback, and that is a record. In 2018, he had a great season. He had 3,187 yards with 19 touchdowns and 9 rushing touchdowns, so he does run the ball a little bit. But then he's just been a practice squad quarterback since then. So at least we know a little bit that he has some college experience. Let's go to Tampa Bay, and they do not have Tom Brady playing as their quarterback. They have Jordan Tamau, who was Ole Miss quarterback. And he was 2018, he had 9 300-yard games, so he can sling it. He has 4 400-yard games, and he was undrafted, but he was signed by the Houston Texans, and he played on their practice squad. And he did play in the XFL, the St. Louis Blackhawks. Battlehawks.
Yep, he sure did. And he played extremely well for St. Louis. So
this is good for these guys to get out of the practice squad and get to play some real football. Like you said, there's only 40 games and with 3 playoff games. So we could watch these guys and see if you might have somebody you can come up. I mean, this is more of a league similar to Kurt Warner.
Yes, you will play your division teams twice, and you'll play your other division once, and that'll be a total of 10 games per team.
Yes. So then we go to the Birmingham Stallions. Their head coach is Skid Holtz. He was the Notre Dame offensive coordinator at one time, and Alex McGough is the quarterback. He was Florida International's star quarterback in 2018. He was a 7th-round pick by Seattle Seahawks. And when he was at FIU, he was the second all-time passing leader. And 2017, he led the Panthers to the Gasparilla Bowl against Temple, and they lost. But he did break his his collarbone, so he wasn't able to finish the game. But they did lose that game.
Yes, Skip Holtz, the son of famous Lou Holtz in the Football Hall of Fame, is a tremendous coach. Obviously, won national championships.
Absolutely. And then we go to the New Orleans Breakers. I think that was another one of the names that were from the USFL, from the 83 teams. Larry Federa, he was the offensive coordinator for Baylor, and he was the head coach for North Carolina. And their quarterback is Kyle Slaughter. He's a 28-year-old player that came from northern Colorado, played up there in Colorado, and he also went to Southern Miss. And he was on the practice squad for the Broncos for a little bit. He played a little bit on that. So most of these guys, these quarterbacks, are practice squad quarterbacks, but they're getting a chance to play. But I'm going to say my prediction out of that is going to be the Houston Gamblers are going to come out of that division. I like the coach. I like the player for Northwestern. I think they have a good chance.
Okay. Fedora coached at Southern Mississippi, so I could see the connection with Slaughter there. I have no idea who to predict. I did see Paxton Lynch was one of the quarterbacks. I guess you're picking just this division.
Yeah,
though?
we're going that. Yeah, Paxton Lynch
So
is
he
awesome.
must be on the other.
He's in Michigan Panthers.
Ah, okay. So out of this division, you're picking the Houston Gamblers.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to seeing it and handicapping it each week.
Okay. And all right, I guess that'll basically cover everything for that division. I guess it might be a little early to make bets on the spreads. I haven't seen any spreads on any of the games yet. I guess we'll do that next week.
Yeah, we'll look at some of the spreads and who's favored to win. I don't think anybody really knows. So, I mean,
No.
I think the most odds are between 3 and 12 on any of the teams. So, I mean, no one really knows. We don't know what we're getting. I mean, we just know who the coaches are. We know who the first-round draft picks are, and we're going to go from there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Big Rich, for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Joe. I had a great time Sunday at the church with you guys over the baseball forecast predictions that we did. I thought it was great that Ronnie and Marc the Shark had some really good inputs. I mean, I love Ronnie's pick with the Dodgers, and I really like Marc the Shark's pick with Toronto. I think that they're going to make a good chance to make a run this year. So good information out there. Get a chance to listen to that, get some insight on some good baseball.
Well, we're proud of the show.
All right.
Thanks, Big Rich. Covering the women's March Madness action and baseball is our correspondent, Rockin' Ronnie McKinnon. How's it going today, Ronnie?
Joe, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Ronnie, going into the Final Four of the women's March Madness, we had South Carolina favored over Louisville and Stanford a slight favorite over Connecticut. Starting with the Friday semifinal games, what happened during the final weekend of the women's NCAA college basketball tournament?
Well, Joe, South Carolina did beat Louisville 72-59. South Carolina was number one all year, number one in the tournament. Louisville was number 4 in the top 25 this year. It pretty much, 13-point win, and not shocked. I thought Louisville would be in that a little bit, but the other game, we had number 2 in the tournament beating number 1 Stanford 63-58. And Connecticut was actually number 5 in the top 25 this year, Stanford number 2.
And yes, that was an upset in my eyes. Connecticut finally won a game outside of Connecticut for the first time in about 5-6 weeks.
Exactly, yeah, they played them all pretty close to home.
Yeah. That set up the Sunday championship game. Who won it all?
Well, Joe, South Carolina beat Connecticut 64-49 by 15 points. I thought Connecticut would give them a little bit better showing there. You know, Connecticut has won 11 championships, but South Carolina took care of them pretty easily, actually. We also, there's a couple good notes on that. The more people actually watched that game than most of the college football games this year. Most also viewed women's title game in 18 years. And 18 years ago, it was UConn and Tennessee. And that was also despite airing at the same time as the Grammys did. So those were two good positive things for the women. And then, of course, South Carolina's Aliyah Boston, who I have talked about before, the power forward and center. She did win the AP Player of the Year.
Yes, well, that's good for the women's game. I will say what was disappointing were the games. South Carolina, beat Louisville and Connecticut very handily. They were clearly the best team, deserved champions, and maybe a dynasty brewing down there in Gamecock land, perhaps.
Right. Well, and that Aliyah Boston I was talking about was a junior. So
one more year with her.
Exactly.
All right. So, Rockin' Ronnie. Major League Baseball season is set to begin tomorrow after months of uncertainty over a labor dispute. You and I and Marc the Shark covered a lot of subjects in our Major League Baseball preview special, which we recorded last Sunday. And we encourage our listeners to take in all of that show on YouTube and our website. And what occurred since Sunday that is important to the upcoming season?
Well, I just wanted to say, Big Rich did a great job, and I'll keep track of the USFL. But come on, man, it's baseball season, right? We're getting ready to play some baseball. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I know Big Rich is too. He's also a Dodger fan, like myself. But anyway, a couple things on some of the players. There's going to be a lot of young guys getting in there. Some of them will still be in AAA, AA, and single A. But there's this kid called Julio Rodriguez, and he had just a great spring training. And Seattle's actually going to have him on the major league team. He's a center fielder. He's a 21-year-old. So I'd keep an eye on him. I did mention a couple guys on the show on Sunday to keep an eye on also. Then we have Lynn, a right-handed starting pitcher for the White Sox. He's going to miss about a month. He's going to undergo knee surgery, and he's got a slight tear in one of the tendons. So that's a concern, obviously. Of course, we did talk about the New York Mets. DeGrom missing at least 4 weeks, and Max Scherzer actually. Instead of starting that game Thursday for DeGrom, he'll be starting Friday. He had a little bit of an issue, but he should be fine. And then we also have this other kid I'd like you to keep an eye on. He's a right-handed starting pitcher for Cincinnati, the Reds. He's a 22-year-old Hunter Green. And just another one to keep an eye on, too, that is going to be on the Major League Club. And real quick, too, we unfortunately we've had 4 players that have been suspended for 80 games for some steroid use. 3 of them are still in the minor league teams, and then we have this Pedro Severino for Milwaukee. He was going to be the backup catcher. So we've started off with 4 guys, including with the minor leagues that are already on 80-game suspensions for some illegal use of some steroids.
Right. Luckily, no major players, and hopefully we don't hear any more stories like that over the course of the year, but I'm sure we will.
Yeah, we probably will, yes.
Yeah. Did the Mets and the Yankees actually pull off a trade this year? I know that's very unusual for them to do that. But I heard something about that.
I don't have anything on that, but I did hear something about that too. It wasn't, as far as I remember, it wasn't any big names. Okay. But they did do a little something. The Yankees didn't do much in the offseason. Everybody expected them to. I still think they're going to be competitive, though.
So what else is in the news this week in Major League Baseball?
Well, Joe, we have discussed this before, or I have on the show, the PitchCom. MLB has approved it for the 2022 season, and the Players Association has also approved it. PitchCom is something that now what they're going to do is that teams that want to use it can. Teams that don't have to. So it's not like it's they can use it, but they're not required to. And there's the guys that have tried it out. Some of the teams, the pitchers and catchers, really like it. The pitcher and catcher will actually, the pitcher will have something in his hat, the catcher will have something in his helmet under the mask. The middle infielders, probably second baseman, shortstop, and the center fielder are all allowed to have that. And of course, this is trying to speed up the game. The pitcher and catcher, how many times does the catcher go out to the pitching mound and they talk, and how long that takes. So that could definitely speed up the game. And then of course, no stealing of signs, which I always thought, hey, if you're on second base and you're able to steal signs, I don't think that's cheating. If you figured out the signs and know what pitch is coming. But anyway, they're hoping that stops the stealing of signs also. And so I'm okay with it. And the guys that have tried it and the managers that have, and I had talked about that before, that have seen it in action have really liked it. And so they are, some teams will be using it.
All right. Well, hopefully that works out well. What are the things we should be looking forward to on the opening days of teams?
Well, Joe, we have opening day is tomorrow. We're going to play some baseball. And actually, 2 of the games have already been canceled. Seattle at Minnesota and Boston at the Yankees due to some heavy winter weather back there. I don't know if you've heard. They've a lot going on there. So those games are, at this point, postponed till Friday. Tomorrow we do have 7 games, and then Friday we have a whole bunch of games. Some of the teams that don't play tomorrow will play Friday. Some of the teams playing tomorrow will play Friday again. I am actually gonna, as time goes on, I'll be doing this on the website and making picks and the runs and and who's favored and who's not. I'm actually gonna throw a couple out there for tomorrow's games. Cleveland at Kansas City. This is going to be a good game because of the pitchers. Shane Bieber, who's got another great chance to win a Cy Young, and Greinke. Zach Greinke, who is now back with Kansas City. They're facing each other in Kansas City. Cleveland is favored a little. I think I think they are going to win that game. It's a minus 120 for that game. And no over-under runs at this point yet that I could get. The other game that I'm looking at is Houston and the LA Angels. That will be in LA, and that's going to have Vasquez for Houston and Ohtani for the Angels pitching, and of course batting. And actually, the Angels at a minus 120, I think they're going to win that game. And that's who I'm going for. That will be at 5:30 our time. The Cleveland, Kansas City will be at 1:10 in the afternoon our time. And then again, like I say, there's a bunch of games on Friday. And I will start putting some picks on and on our website.
Okay, so upcoming picks will be on the website. I was going to ask you about overs and unders. Would you lean towards unders this time of year, early in the season? Because the pitchers generally have an advantage, they say? Or maybe 50-50?
I'd probably say it's 50-50. I think you're probably right because they had a little shorter spring training for the pitchers. So maybe you can put a little more into that, for this year, in this season, in the beginning. That pitchers might have a shakier start. Everybody knows I'm a big Dodger fan, but they struggled this. Again, I don't put a lot into spring training games, but they play the Angels in that Freeway Series, and they got beat up pretty good the first 2 games, and then yesterday they won, but. 2 of the starters that are be starting the first 2 games for the Dodgers, Buehler and Urias, got kind of beat up a little bit in those games, and most of, not all, but most of the starting players were playing on both teams, and so that's a little concerning. But then again, both of them, shrugged it off and said, "No big deal, they'll be ready." So we'll see what happens. But to your point, yeah, I think that maybe you can lean a little that way. That the hitters might have a little bit more of advantage in the beginning over the pitching.
More than normal.
More than normal, I would think. Yeah.
Okay.
Not much, but
okay. Before you go, Ronnie, we have Big Rich, who has something he'd like to share with you.
Yeah,
I think.
Take or fake.
Or fake.
I'm happy to do it, Big Rich.
Okay,
and
so
Joe.
as you just met, it was a great story about Hunter Green. Cincinnati Reds do have some problems with their pitching. Luis Castillo and Mike Minor are both on the injured list as of now. So April 12th, the home opener against the Reds, Hunter Green, take or fake, will be the starting pitcher.
I'd say I'll take that.
Okay, well that's good to know. But the starting pitcher is going to be Joe Burrow. He's going to be throwing the first pitch. So Joe Burrow's going to throw the first pitch out there. So he'll be the starting pitcher
the
for the
Cincinnati
Cincinnati quarterback.
Okay. Who I was rooting for, and I did bring up that Hunter Green, and that's weird because I had brought it up before too about Cincinnati. They were going somewhere, and all of a sudden they got rid of some of their guys, and I don't understand what they're doing because I thought they would have a chance to actually compete for that division. But anyway, thanks for that, Big Rich. Fooling your Dodger friend and buddy, really cool, man.
I will say Colin Kaepernick is available for pitching duties. He did have a 90-mile-an-hour fastball in Turlock High School back in the day.
Yeah.
And he should have chose baseball over football.
Never been a fan of his either, Joe. So,
the University of Nevada is very happy to have had him as a football player.
Sure. Oh, of course, yeah.
Next up is our NBA analyst, Marc the Shark Sabella. How are you feeling today, Marc?
I'm doing great, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Time is running out in the regular season of the National Basketball Association. What's going on this week?
Joe, I'm going to start our last regular season podcast and segment on the association with a trivia question for you. Are you ready for this?
Oh, I'm always ready for trivia. I love trivia.
So your trivia question today, Joe, if you choose to accept it, is of all the teams that we talked about that would be finishing in the top 2-3 of their divisions during our preseason basketball special at the beginning of the year, what's the one team that actually really shocked and disappointed and didn't make the playoffs?
Didn't even make the playoffs
Didn't
at all.
even make the playoffs at all.
Well, that's an easy one.
Yes.
Because it's my favorite team.
And
The
what
Los
would that
Angeles
be?
Lakers.
That's a take.
They just got... oh, that's a take. Yeah. They just got eliminated last night.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Joe, to go on with that, the Lakers, and I usually don't like to hijack the, our segments with just talking about one team. And I usually don't like to talk about the Lakers too often on our show because I think the Lakers get enough airtime being in Los Angeles and with their polarizing figures. But I can't help it today, Joe. It's just incredible media like tornado. In fact, bigger than that. It's got to be a hurricane. Is just hitting the Lakers right now. So you had Magic and Kareem, two of the all-time greats of the Lakers, come out, not only criticize the team from owner down, actually, but also criticize LeBron James personally.
I didn't hear any of that yet. I know I did hear that Kareem apologized for what he said afterwards. I'm certainly not surprised by the criticism. It's easy to sit back there and do that. I remember when Magic coached the team and they were terrible.
Yeah.
So it's easy to be sitting on the outside
Of course.
and hammer away at them. But maybe you can give us a little detail as to what was said.
Do you know what Kareem was citing LeBron James for? It wasn't even on the court.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can't argue with what LeBron's done on the court when he's played. He's played well.
Yeah.
He's had a good season.
I think it was the ancillary antics. Well, I guess one actually did occur on the court. So what Kareem was tweeting and complaining about LeBron James wasn't really his play or any of the stuff Magic was complaining about. He was complaining about number one, an obscene dance deemed obscene by the NBA after like scoring or winning a game or something like that. So I guess he was challenging his character, kind of saying, you know what, you don't do that. You don't do stuff like that. And
NBA players aren't supposed to dance.
I guess to Kareem, you're not supposed to.
I see it all the time.
I know, but I guess it was an obscene dance that was,
okay.
It was kind of maybe outlawed or maybe talked to by David Stern at the time. It's actually an old dance that he just replicated. And
all right.
I guess Kareem. So that was the first issue. The second issue, which had nothing to do with the court, was he was unhappy about a tweet that LeBron did during the year, and maybe it was even recently, of not knowing the difference between the common cold, influenza, and COVID-19. And those were the two issues that Kareem had an issue with.
Dr. Kareem.
Dr. Kareem suddenly, yes.
Yes, not Dr. J, Dr. Kareem.
And not Dancing with the Stars Kareem either.
No. Did he try that? Hopefully he had a very tall partner with him at the time. But
no, I don't know what happened, but you're right, Joe. He definitely thought about it over the night. It was basically within 24 hours he retracted that and apologized. Yes. But he did go on to say, I'm not, challenging LeBron on all his decision making, but when you do things like he kind of left the door open, like you're going to get criticized more, not just by me, but I'll apologize for this one, type of thing.
Tom Brady wouldn't do those things, of course not. So, no. That's what leaders do.
Exactly.
But I will say Kareem does smoke a lot of marijuana, and he's a big proponent of marijuana. Maybe he smoked a little too much that night. Got a little out of control.
Yes. And also Kareem doesn't deflate balls like Tom Brady. So
no, he doesn't.
Yeah. So that kind of led into, now I think this is already happening, Joe, but Magic, I think, decided to go on the Big Mouse and do a series of interviews. He did it with a number of different basketball shows and sports shows. So it was all over the Big Mouse's airwaves. And there are some juicy sound bites from there. One, he criticizes LeBron for I guess the big one, which maybe you heard, is he criticizes LeBron for playing the general manager and taking that away from Pelinka. So what Magic said was he gave the DeMar DeRozan, I mean, he set the whole thing up for DeMar DeRozan to go there. And then you could trade Kuzma for Buddy Hield, which I think you and I were talking about actually during that segment of the trade deadline, that these are the proposed trades and these are the player movements that are going to happen. And supposedly LeBron was made aware of this is what was going to happen, and he nixed it. He said, no, I don't want to play. I don't want to play with DeMar. I'm talking to Westbrook. That's my guy. I want him in. So Jeannie Buss, Rob Pelinka had to reverse gears, go away from DeMar DeRozan. Magic has egg all over his face now, has to go back to DeMar and go, they're not signing you. So he ended up signing with the Bulls. And then because Westbrook's contract is so rich, they did not have a chance to bring back KCP and bring back Alex Caruso.
Yeah, well, that was pretty idiotic because DeRozan was a free agent, and they could have got him for nothing. They traded to get Westbrook, and that totally fell apart. But that doesn't go on LeBron, in my opinion. That goes on the ownership. The ownership has to say no to LeBron.
I agree.
Who put LeBron in charge? He doesn't own the team.
And I know I promise this to you, Joe, every single time that I'm not going to bring him up and not going to bring up this team, but I have to because there's so many comparisons.
Oh, it's Hollywood.
It's Hollywood, but it's Kyrie Irving in a different. I mean, it's the same thing. You're trying to hold your ownership hostage, and that's what Kyrie did to the Nets this year. And he thinks he won, and I'm right by being dramatic and everything. But LeBron, and we don't really know what the talks were behind the scenes, right? Pelinka with AD, with Westbrook. We don't really know any of that stuff. But I really think before LeBron signed his 3-year deal with the Lakers, I really think he was, basically told, you're going to be given a lot of the general manager decision making. Before we go out and actually negotiate the deals, we want your buy-in on this. But you're right, Joe. If it really came down to something like that, that is way above what he's supposed to be doing. And that's really, shame on the Laker management for allowing it to happen, if it really did happen that way.
Yeah. It's not supposed to ever happen like that. But that's the NBA for you.
So I'm going to do a special take or fake with you right now, Joe.
Take or fake.
I think your take or fake is, I'll give you a two-parter. Part one, LeBron James will not be on the Lakers next season. And part two, LeBron will be on the Lakers, take or fake, and the others, Anthony Davis, they're going to implode the team. Everyone else is going to be gone, and they're going to put fresh, brand new players with LeBron next season.
Well, I think they'd be crazy to get rid of LeBron. He's the best player on the team. Why would you do that? It's the other guys that seem to be a problem. Look at the year LeBron's having. Right now, he's in a 3-way battle with Joel Embiid and Giannis, right there for the scoring, leading the league in scoring.
Ask to Joe.
He does need 2 more games to qualify. He's averaging over 30 points a game. Why would you get rid of him? He plays Denver and Oklahoma City, I believe. He'll play in those games and hopefully lead the league in average. It is pretty amazing what he's doing. At the age of 37, he could get the scoring title. Not even Michael Jordan won the title at that old. What's really remarkable, LeBron has actually spent more years in the NBA than he has not. 19th year in the NBA, and he was 18 when he got there.
Wow.
It's a remarkable story what he's
stat.
doing. I don't know how you get rid of... could you imagine the Lakers without LeBron? Then who do you got? Nothing.
You basically are starting from scratch. So I'm taking it that's a fake.
That would be a fake. Ronnie would be proud of me for not saying fake.
So take or fake on the second question, Joe. So LeBron stays.
Oh.
And then the scenario where basically AD's gone.
Yeah.
Westbrook is gone.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, they did make some good pickups over the offseason. Kendrick Nunn was incredible. But, one of their other big free agent signings, it's escaping me right now, but he didn't even play a single game, and he was supposed to be one of their starters. And so I guess take or fake. What would you say on the second question there?
I'm taking, if I understood your take or fake,
yeah.
I'm taking
AD
keeping LeBron and everybody else goes.
Yeah.
The big money. If you can trade AD to like the Knicks or something, get some of those players back, whatever, that'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's the way I'm going.
Great.
Okay. So have we got some important games going on this week? I guess playoff seeding is in doubt in some places.
Yes, Joe. Great question. It doesn't seem like there'd be that many important games. There's only 4 games left or less for most of the teams. The regular season ends in 4 days. By Sunday, actually, is the final day of games. And then the write-in games will be played next week. So there are some really key positioning games. There's some, some you'll have a team that really needs to win, or really you need another team to lose, and it's playing another team that's either already got locked in or whatever. I'm not highlighting any of those teams. These three games are really where they're very similar, and they can really lose position if one of them loses and one of them wins. So let's get to it. Thursday, April 7th, number 2 Boston, and when I say number 2, I mean number 2 in the Eastern Conference, is at Milwaukee, number 3 in the Eastern Conference. And technically they're maybe a half a game separating each other. So this is probably going to do it in terms of, making the, final seeding, assuming there isn't anything else going on between these teams. Number 2 Boston, 49-30, 21-17 on the road. An astounding 23-15 road against the spread. They go into Milwaukee, 49-30, who's first in the Central, and again, just a half a game behind Boston in the East. Now, what's interesting is Boston has beat Milwaukee at home 2 times this year and lost to Milwaukee on Christmas Day in Milwaukee. So this game, fourth and final game, is in Milwaukee. I mean, all these games, Joe, are going to be close. Milwaukee probably going to be giving 3 just because they're the home team. Also, they can stay in the number 3 position. I mean, how big is it for Giannis and company to actually really fight in that game? But they're pretty tough at home. So, oh man, that's going to be tough. I'm going to say Boston's going to keep it close and just take as many points as you can on that one. But I would probably take Milwaukee on the money line. I think ultimately they're going to win that game.
And Boston's still missing one of their 3 best players.
Yeah, Williams is out for at least the first round of the playoffs.
Okay.
And actually, since you and I talked about that on the air, Boston has been starting to come back down and cool off a little bit. So Friday, April 8th, the surprising number 7 Cleveland Cavaliers, 43-37. Really shocking though, Joe. 1-5 in their last 6 road games straight up. They go into the aforementioned number 8 Brooklyn Nets, and Kyrie Irving can play there. Cavs are 1 game better in the loss column than Brooklyn. So this is going to be another critical seeding thing. What's interesting is the last time you and I looked at Brooklyn last week, Joe, Brooklyn was in that number 10 playoff seed, and then last night, after all the games are played, they jumped up to number 8. So I don't think they can leave the play-in seed, but they can at least get up to number 7 if they play their cards right. And I think they're playing right now and not winning. So, but anyways, Brooklyn 40-38. At home, 40-38 overall, just above 500, 17-21 at home. And I know you and I talk about this is a broken record. It just doesn't make any sense, but 9-28-1 home against the spread. So Brooklyn's going to be favored in that game. I have to say that they're going to cover that spread. I mean, it's probably going to be a couple of points. It's just too important of a game where they can move up to number 7. I'm forced to take Brooklyn in this game. What do you think about that one?
Well, just because of the importance of the game, if the spread were fairly high, I would probably take Cleveland. Just because of the spread record you told me, 9-29.
It could be 5.5. I'm projecting 5.5, Joe.
Well, personally, I would take the points because I would go strictly by the spread records.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Brooklyn on the money line just because I don't think they care about how many points they win by. I think they're going to play to win.
Okay, I could see that.
And then Sunday, the last day of the regular season, Boston, the number 2 seed. And this doesn't really affect anything, but I thought this is an interesting matchup, and this is a big, rich special, so you know who the other team is. It's number 2 Boston in the East playing on the last day of the year against number 2 Memphis in the West. Again, I don't know if Boston can move up or down. I think that's more of a critical game for them. than Memphis. Memphis already has number 2 locked up. There's no way they can move into Phoenix's number 1 spot or drop down to number 3. There's 4 teams right now, Joe, separated. I guess I probably should have started with this. There's actually 3 games in the loss column separating 4 teams. The number 3 through 7 teams, Golden State, Utah, Denver, and Dallas in the West. And the same can be said in the East, except that those are the top 4 teams that are 2 games separate. So you got Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. So those are the teams that listeners are going to want to watch. That's where you're going to have the greatest amount of movement in the standings. Phoenix and Memphis, they're untouchable right now. They're locked into the 1-2 spots. And so I think the game means more to Boston than number 2 Memphis. I think Memphis will be giving 4.5. I again would take Boston with the points on that because they have more to gain and lose on that.
Makes a lot of sense. Memphis could just rest players. You don't want people getting hurt in meaningless games like this.
Right.
And Boston needs it. So
exactly. And
like
Boston did beat Memphis at the Gardens on March the 3rd. So I just was wanting to say that.
All right.
It's a bad East Coast accent. But.
Yeah, well. Mark, your picks went 4-1 last week, meaning you've gone an excellent 7-1 over the last 2 weeks. Do you have any predictions or thoughts about the play-in games coming up before the actual real playoffs start?
Yes, Joe, I do. And the reason why I wanted to do this today for the listeners is because by the time we're on the air next week, the play-in games will have already happened. So as you know, Joe, you and I are always predicting the schedules, the point spreads, how, are players playing, that sort of thing. So we're going to go and put this on steroids because we really don't know if this is going to happen. But the way the seedings match up right now, these are going to be your play-in games that happen before next Wednesday. So after regular season, Sunday's games, I am guessing in the East, you're going to have number 10 Charlotte playing at number 9 Atlanta. And now remember, these are one game to move on. So
right, you lose that game, you're eliminated.
I'm going to say Atlanta is going to win that one. Trae Young is going to be too much. He has the playoff experience. Atlanta gets it done in that game. I'm not going to give you any point spreads or anything. I'm just saying Atlanta's going to win.
Right. They won the they went to the conference final.
Yes.
Eastern Conference final last year, Atlanta, and obviously
disappointing year. It's been a disappointing year.
Super disappointing, but they certainly have the experience, as you said,
and they can make up ground once they get out of the play-in.
Okay.
So our favorite. It's kind of a rematch of the last regular season game, but they may flip-flop. So right now, if the game were to be played on Friday that we just talked about and the seedings don't change, you got number 8 Brooklyn again playing at number 7 Cleveland. So that's why that game on the regular season is so critical. So that could really flip-flop here. So again, I say Brooklyn is probably going to win that game at home against Cleveland. It's going to be close. It's going to be closely contested. I like your pick on taking the points on that. But I think once that happens and these two play each other again, Brooklyn's going to win that one again. They got way too much. Kyrie's latest comment is, I wasn't ready for all this stress of fighting it out at the end of the season like this. Which he put on himself.
Yeah, the stress he created. He can't handle his own self.
That's right. Joe.
Nobody else can either.
No, you and I can't.
And
our producer can't either.
There's not a human being on the planet that can handle Kyrie Irving.
That's right. Except himself. And his mom.
Maybe his mom can.
Yeah.
Give her credit.
In the West, Joe, you have number 10 San Antonio playing at number 9 New Orleans. And it's funny, but New Orleans is a collection of ex-Lakers, and wasn't that where the Lakers were supposed to be? Well, way higher than that, but I say New Orleans gets the job done, and I'm not going to just take all of the home teams, which it seems like I'm doing right now. No, actually, no. If number 8 Brooklyn is on the road, I am taking a road team there. So I'm going to say New Orleans gets the job done at home on that. I even heard that Zion, or his stepdad, was saying, "Oh, he looks great in video. Look at him dunk over this little guard, and he's ready to play in the playoffs." Well, I give that very little chance. I don't think that's going to happen, but...
Yeah, I don't think he plays in the playoffs, and I hate to go against Greg Popovich, too. So I would be interested to see how many points San Antonio's getting in that game. I don't think they're going to just lay down. No, they won't. Not with one of Pop's teams. You're right, Joe. Again, we're not looking at the point spreads, but that is an interesting bet there. I would say New Orleans is probably only a handful of points. I mean, probably not much. Not too many. No. And in the final game, the number 8 Clippers, and they've done this without their big two for most of the season. Paul George has come back, but Kawhi's been out the whole year with the ACL tear in the playoffs last year. So number 8 Clippers play at number 7 Minnesota. And Anthony Towns has just been amazing this year. That's going to be close. But I think the Clippers, if Paul George is playing, I say he goes in with the Clippers and they win. They are so ecstatic that the Lakers are out of the playoffs. They're the little mini kings of LA again. And they're just going to ride that momentum and try and go as far as they can in these playoffs. They would also be gunning for Golden State because that's a huge rivalry also. So, but the Clippers go into mini and they win. If they finish number 8, they'll get Phoenix right off the bat. And, yes, and then we can put an end to those. We can put an end to that, right? And then, but I'm kind of rooting for Minnesota in that one. I'm not being a Laker fan. I want to see the Clippers fail immediately. So I'll root for Minnesota. Hopefully, I can get some points. Just cross my fingers and take Minnesota on that one. That one might be a little more even, I have a funny feeling, that looks like the 4. Seems like a pick'em. Yeah. But that's basically it, Joe. I mean, we always try to look into a foggy crystal ball and give our listeners the best action, the best bets, and the best picks that we can. So, okay. Well, we'll see what we can do. Maybe we'll do a little preview show. If not, we'll preview... definitely next week, the playoffs. Sounds great, Joe. Looking forward to it. Well, good work, Marc, and thank you. Thank you. Our final guest today is Gator Gates. How are things going today, Gator?
Oh, I'm excellent, Joe. Nice to be outside, too, today.
It's a beautiful day. What's the news in the betting world lately?
Well, Joe, last Wednesday, federal documents were unsealed regarding an illegal sports betting ring in Southern California. Now, Wayne Nixon, 45, a former Oakland A's minor leaguer, was running the book for about 2 decades. Now, in 2002, he recruited 3 former Major League Baseball players and 1 former football player to help generate business. Now, in 2014, he moved the business online through a call center called Sand Island Sports in Costa Rica. Now, Nixon did receive $245,000 from a football player, $8,000 from a baseball analyst, $4,000 from a Major League Baseball coach, $25,000 from an NBA player, and $5 million on the 2019 Super Bowl, and etc. But Celebrity Financial LLC in Sherman Oaks had cashed at least $18 million in bets from the illegal business. Now, Wayne admitted to gross revenue of over $2,000 a day. He is looking at 8 years in jail, $1.2 million in back taxes, and $1.3 in forfeit assets. Now, Joe, with a large volume of illegal sports betting activity in California, I'm just wondering if this bust will put pressure on Cali's legislators. With 40 million people, they do have the potential to become the most lucrative legal sports betting market.
Yeah, I never understood why California didn't have legal betting. I mean, we do have horse racing there, certainly. We have a lottery. Why can't we just bet on sports too? I think it's just a matter of time, but they will be one of the last states to do it for sure. I was wondering how many of those names, these people are current players or coaches?
Well, the way I was reading it, Joe, it sounded to me like they were all former.
They're all former. So
right,
nobody...
but it sounded like their clientele were former athletes.
Okay, so it's not. This isn't a story that's going to get like totally worse, where there's some kind of scandal involving players that are playing right now.
Well, now they just released it on Wednesday, so I'm not sure how long.
Okay.
When did they get busted?
So maybe more to come.
More to come, I'm sure.
Story.
Well, I hope so.
Okay.
Give me something to talk about.
Yeah. So what's the latest news in the National Hockey League? That's something to talk about right there.
Oh, yeah, of course, Joe. We only have about 15 games left, if not less, for each team. But Ryan Getzlaf announced yesterday, that he will retire after this season. Now, he did play all 17 years with the Ducks, 12 seasons as the captain, and he is the all-time goal scorer and for Anaheim in regular season as well as playoffs. Now, he is the 12th player, Joe, to play for the same team for 10 years and have 1,000 points. Now, 6 of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. That would be Steve Yzerman, Mario Lemieux, Joe Sakic, Ray Bourque, Jerome Iginla, Ron Francis, and we have 2 active guys, Joe. We have Sidney Crosby and Alice Ovechkin, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be in the Hall of Fame as well.
Yeah, that's a great list of players. Certainly Getzlaf will get in the Hall of Fame also.
Never really was an Anaheim fan. I did like Teemu Selanne, but it is sad. Even though I'm not a fan, it is sad for Anaheim.
Yes, they did win a Stanley Cup. I'm not sure if Getzlaf was on that team, but he
Yes,
was.
he was. Yes,
So he
he
does
was.
have a cup ring there. Okay, beautiful. Well, speaking of the Stanley Cup, starting soon, where's the money going on the champion?
Well, MGM reported that for the Western Conference, 50% of their actions going on the Colorado Avalanche, and 32.3% of it's going on the Stanley Cup. That does worry me a little bit, Joe. Of course, I do want the Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup, but I did take Boston over the Avs to win, and I still believe in that as long as they can get past Florida.
Yeah, if the public is going with somebody, generally you want to stay away from that.
Yeah, so it does scare me a little bit, Joe.
Mm-hmm. So, Gator, your picks went 8-2 last week, meaning you've gone 109-39 over the last 18 weeks. Remarkable. What are your predictions for the upcoming week?
Okay, Joe, well, I have 2 games starting Thursday. I have Carolina over Buffalo and Calgary over the Sharks. Friday, I have 2 games as well. I have Florida over Buffalo, and I have Colorado over Winnipeg. Saturday, I have 3. Vegas over Arizona, Calgary over Seattle, Dallas over New Jersey, and 2 games on Sunday. Minnesota, who is very hot, going against the Kings, and Carolina beating Anaheim. And Tuesday, I have 1 game. I have, again, Calgary, who's red hot, beating Seattle.
You're saying Minnesota is hot, and didn't Marc-Andre Fleury end up getting traded there? Mm-hmm. Is he a part of the reason why they're hot, or is he kind of like sitting the bench, 50-50?
Well, the most obvious to me, Joe, is that Talbot has a better save percentage ever since Fleury got there.
So little pressure.
So, they're getting hot at the right time. And I used to tell Joe even way before the show, I said I always jumping on Minnesota's bandwagon, right? And then about a month into it, before the playoffs start, they're always falling apart. Not this year, Joe.
Just the opposite.
I sure hope so. Keep my fingers crossed, but I'm really loving the way that Minnesota's playing.
So college hockey's version of the Final Four, the Frozen Four, starts tomorrow, which is Thursday, with the University of Denver against Michigan and Minnesota battling Minnesota State. What do you expect to happen?
Well, I do think that Denver has a shot. They are seeded 4th, and Michigan is seeded 1st, and Denver's at a plus 140. I'm thinking, Joe, whoever wins that game is going to win the Frozen Four. But I do love the way Denver plays. Every time they think that Denver's not going to win, they find a way to win, and I love it. Minnesota's playing Minnesota State. Minnesota is an underdog at a plus 110. These two teams know each other very well. Doesn't matter what their records are. Flip a coin, Joe.
Yes. No truth to Hayden Fox being the coach of Minnesota State. This is not coach. This is hockey we're talking about here. Shifting over to NASCAR, what happened last Sunday in Richmond?
Okay, Joe. Well, in Richmond, Ryan Blaney got his third straight pole and did lead the first 128 laps, but he did end up in 7th. Now, the Fords also got second with Kevin Harvick. Now, but the story, Joe, was Denny Hamlin. He won on his home track, and the first time since 2016 since he's done that. And this race had 4 green pit stops, and teams were trying to figure out tire strategy. But in the second stage, Hamlin and Christopher Bell stayed out on the track while the field opted to pit for some new tires. That decision did pay off for Denny in the final stage. Denny did put those tires on right before the restart and never looked back. But Bell ended up in 6th, though. But Toyota and Chevy both finished with 4 cars in the top 10. Ford only had Blaney and Harvick.
Yeah, well, Joe Gibbs Racing has won 9 of 13 at Richmond now, so they own that track. That is our 7th different winner this year out of 7 races. We already talked about that last week, how crazy that is, but the new next-gen car has a lot to do with that. And this broke a streak of 12 straight races won by drivers under the age of 30. Hamlin, he's over 40 now.
New era, Joe, for sure. And the Fords are having a hard time too, Joe. I just want to throw that out. I don't know what tracks they're going to be good at, or if they're ever going to be good at.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Next weekend, we move on to Martinsville. What are you predicting?
Brakes, Joe. Watch your brakes. But anyways, the first night race is at this weekend at Martinsville on Saturday, 4 o'clock on Fox Sports 1. Now, we have Martin Truex as the favorite, my favorite driver, at 9-2. Denny is at 6-1. Short track, not a bad bet. But, Joe, I really like Chase Elliott. He's 7-1, so my favorite driver, 9-2, or Chase Elliott, 7-1. I think I like 7-1.
All right. Well, Truex has won 3 out of the last 5 races at Martinsville. Of course, he had won 3 out of the last 5 at Richmond going into last week. Did lead for a while. Obviously didn't win it. I'm going to go with Truex again. We'll see how it goes. What's up next in the world of Formula One racing?
Well, we're headed over to Australia, which used to be the first race of the year, but not anymore. We have our favorite, Leclerc. He's at 7-5. And we also have Verstappen at a plus 110. But Lewis Hamilton, he really hasn't had a great start this year. He does know this track, and you cannot count him out. He's 14-1. I think the books are nuts on that. I would jump on that.
Well, yeah, that seems like a lot. From last year being ever so close to a championship, now he's not even close to winning a race, according to the odds makers.
It's just in his head, Joe. It really is. I mean, look at all the stuff he's had to go through, and this is a track he knows. So I think he has a great shot. But 14-1, I'll take a chance.
And good news for the United States in Formula One racing.
Well, Monday they announced that Vegas is going to be on the calendar next year, and that gives the U.S. 3 races here next year. We're going to have Miami, Austin, Texas, and now Vegas. So how sweet is that, Joe?
It's the best in the world. We have 3 races, and no other country can boast more than 2. So we are becoming Formula One crazy here in this country. And it's just going to get more and more popular.
And I'm glad to see that, Joe, because I remember that the Formula One drivers took 1 lap at Indianapolis and then boycotted the race. So
that did happen. Finally, we get to my favorite golf tournament of the year, the Masters, golf's first major, played in Augusta, Georgia. What's the big news there, in case you haven't heard?
Well, there was question if Tiger was going to play or not, and he did announce that he is going to play. Fred Couples said that he is bombing his drives, and his chipping looks great, his irons look great. But, Joe, I was watching the par 3s. par 3 tournament or whatever you want to call that. Right before it started raining, and Tiger looked like he was hopping around a little bit. So I'm just having questions if he's going to be able to walk the whole 18 holes. Or
Right. Being a 5-time champion, he does know the course, but it is extremely hilly, even mountainous, you might say, for a golf course. So
yes,
you need to be healthy just to walk it. And we'll see if he can actually make it all the way to the end. He hasn't even teed off yet, but it seems like he will. And his odds are 40-1, so somebody's bound to take a shot on him.
Oh, I'm sure. They wouldn't look how many Tiger fans there are.
Yes, and there are odds on him to make the cut or not, which might be a more easier shot at it with the smaller group of players.
I would always look at those props.
Yes, and I guess like 50 or so make the cut, and out of 90, and like 20 of those people are not going to win the tournament or even make the cut. They're ex-champions, ceremonial players, and it's. I would guess Tiger would, if he was healthy, he would make the cut. But
well, he knows the golf course, and that's a huge advantage. Anytime you know the golf course.
Yeah.
We have. I don't know. I was going to say that Phil Mickelson's not going to be there for the first time since 1994.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't feel like talking all of a sudden. He's done too much of that lately, and that's gotten him into some trouble without getting into too much detail. But yeah, he's trying to stay. He's laying low right now. Let's just say
he should. That's pretty good. I don't know what to say about that, Joe. But as far as handicapping this tournament, Joe, it's kind of a coin flip. You know that. Who knows who's going to win? But at first, I was looking at Dustin Johnson, and he's at 15-1. But then I started looking at Colin Morikawa at 12-1. Either one of those in my eyes is pretty good. I'm going to take Morikawa.
Well, Scotty Scheffler has been the hottest player, but I always put my money on Brooks Koepka and Jordan Spieth and cross my fingers.
Yeah, that's good too, Joe. It's a coin flip.
We'll see it. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, golf is so hard to predict the winner. Like defending champion Japan's Hideki Matsuyama. But there are numerous matchups and props to wager on that are much easier to hit, and you can actually parlay the matchups. So you can kind of make some money off those.
Exactly, Joe.
Gator, you wouldn't have a prediction on the World Curling Championship being contested in Las Vegas, would you?
Oh, of course I do, Joe. I love that sport, of course. And how can you not? You got Canada 6-0 right now. So those next two that are close to them is Scotland and Sweden. But U.S. just lost to Scotland last night. U.S. is tied with 5th. They're sitting 3-3 right now. Italy is 3-3. So I would just take Canada. Just keep taking Canada or Scotland. That sounds good to me. But I also want to shout out to the girls. They were playing up in Prince Edwards in Canada. Then they ended up in 5th. Just barely got out of going for the medal round. So.
Oh, bummer there.
Hi.
Yes. Well, Canada is undefeated, you said? Well, Italy went through the Olympics totally undefeated. And so it wouldn't. I don't know why Italy's doing so poorly now compared to the Olympics, but I would guess you kind of get on a roll, and Canada looks like a pretty good favorite.
Well, yeah, especially the Olympics, Joe. I was taking Canada. Canada wasn't anywhere in there, in the men's and the women's. So it's really hard to predict who's going to be hot. Just like your goalies in hockey, got to have a hot goalie. Price last year got him to the Stanley Cup.
You can get on a roll in curling too.
Exactly.
Last but not least, we have to congratulate the men's soccer national team, which qualified for the World Cup, which begins November 21st. Great job, Gator, and thank you.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you so much.
Sponsored by MXE Media. Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time for the moments we've all been waiting for, the stories that make us furious about bets that appeared surely to be winners, but in the end something went horribly wrong, and they ended up being losers. It's the segment we affectionately call You Got Hosed.
You got hosed.
So, Gator, do you have a You Got Hosed story for this week?
Yeah, Joe, my You Got Hosed story is Kyle Busch. He was 8.5 going into Richmond Sunday. With about 50 laps to go, NASCAR black flagged the 18 when they noticed a piece of tape that was taped on his grill flapping around. But Kyle started the race in third and was chasing the leaders down at the time that happened, and he did finish ninth. But Joe, when I was handicapping this race, I thought the Toyotas were going to have a great day there, and I said that on the show. And the 3 Toyotas that were 8.5 were Martin Truex, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Busch. So I think that if you picked Kyle Busch out of those 3, I would have to say that you got hosed this week.
I would have to agree.
Joe, do you got a you got hosed story for us?
Well, this week is an easy one, as we already talked about it earlier in the show.
Right.
Anyone who bet Kansas -4 or 4.5 or 5 in the college championship game got hosed. That one Kansas player stepped out of bounds with the ball up 3 points and 4 seconds left. Surely would have been fouled and certainly would have made at least one free throw, leaving North Carolina very little time to score again. I was super lucky to cover the 4-point spread with Carolina, but whoever bet Kansas definitely got hosed.
I just want to say, Joe, on that, when you're playing in a game like that, the national championship game, you got to be a little more aware of where you are. So I blame him totally. He stepped out twice, Joe. Not just once, twice. So yeah, I think you all got hosed.
Yeah, he had to control his feet in that sense, and had North Carolina shot a 3-pointer at that point, they'd be going to overtime, and maybe Kansas wouldn't have even won the championship.
Yeah, you wouldn't have known, exactly.
You got hosed.
So that's all for this week's show. I'd like to thank my associates, Big Richard Martin, Rockin' Ronnie McKinnon, Marc the Shark Sabella, and Gator Gates, our producer, our engineer, our editor, our junior IT tech, Caden Martin, who can't be here. He's out in left field playing baseball for Carson High, and everyone for listening. We'd like you to visit our Covering the Field website to check out our many articles and our picks of the day and week. We'd like to remind you listeners to email us at coveringthefield@gmail.com. Give us your feedback, your You Got Hosed moments, and any other comments you'd like to give us, and find us on Twitter at Covering Field. Thank you for tuning into the show, and we look forward to bringing you another episode of Covering the Field.